Hola, Vincenzo.
Lali, it's so good to see you.
So nice to see you. How are you?
I'm great, although I'm a little bummed because I didn't get to record this next guest. I wasn't on the show.
Yeah.
We've done that a couple times where Lali got a chance to record and I didn't. But
Wah, wah.
yeah, I know, womp womp. So who was the guest? And yeah, tell us about
So
who it
a
was.
dead giveaway should be the Rolex 24 hats that we're both wearing. I was so happy. I was able to speak with Tom Blomqvist, someone that I really admire because he's a guy who's raced in everything. Vincenzo's wearing his Meyer Shank Racing hoodie that I made him buy in Daytona because as soon as I saw it, I'm like, it looks fire. You have to buy it.
Thank you.
Tom is a guy who's raced. He grew up racing in single seaters in Europe, and
Mm,
the story we've heard before, Vincenzo, you get to a point in the career and you've sort of run out of money and opportunities, and there's very limited funding and seats. And so then he went and he raced in DTM. He's raced in WEC. He's raced Formula E. He's raced IndyCar. He now races in IMSA. So this is a really well-rounded racer, which is something I always admire in race car drivers is when they can sort of conquer different disciplines. So yeah, it was an absolute pleasure to speak with him. He was lovely. The chat is really insightful. He has some great stories to tell, and we were bummed you couldn't join us.
I still get to watch the episode because someone's got to edit it. But I want to know one thing before we go into it. One thing that you learned about Tom or in the conversation that maybe you didn't know before or you were surprised by.
So something that's a great question, Vincenzo, because something that I find fascinating in general is athletes, but we'll speak directly to about drivers who have a parent who was a very successful driver. This is something I find fascinating because I feel that there's a really strange family dynamic in that, right? We see it
Yeah,
with Michael Schumacher and Mick. We've seen it with Marco Andretti and Michael Andretti and Mario Andretti. It happens in racing, right?
sure.
So Tom's dad, Stig Blomqvist, was a very successful rally driver. He was
Hmm.
Swedish champion 7 times. He won the World Rally Championship. So he grew up, Tom, in this family, right? So something I find quite interesting, first of all, is that dynamic in general. He's quite close friends with Carlos Sainz, who also had a very successful rally driver dad, or has still. And Tom, at some point, says that he almost wishes his dad had been a little harder on him, that it would have pushed him a little bit more. That perhaps the dad was too easy, and I found that very interesting because probably when he was a kid he wouldn't have wanted that, and now he wishes he had.
Yeah, I as now a parent, but obviously as once a child and now growing up, you think to yourself in the moment, depending on where you're at, you want the opposite of what you're getting in that moment, right? If your parents were tough on you, my parents were very tough on me, and I wanted more lenient. And then as I grow up, I'm like, thank goodness they were like that because I wouldn't have learned any other way. But vice versa, I have friends where their parents were very lenient and they probably were happy with it in the moment. They probably didn't want anything more in the moment. Although some have expressed in the moment too, we're like, oh, I wish my parent cared more. That's what they would say. And then as they grow up later, they're like, man, I really wish I was tougher or whatever. So it is cool to hear that from a driver, like, someone who we see these guys race at the limit of, what's humanly possible week in and week out. And those that had the opportunity to grow up with a parent like that, you would think, I mean, we hear stories of like Max Verstappen and you hear, if you're watching Formula One, you hear that story a lot. They talk about Yost all the time, and he was extremely tough on him. And Max has never really expressed regret from it. He's like, no, this is how I got to be where I'm at because I had that. So it is
Yeah.
cool to hear. It is cool to hear that, and I am excited for others to hear it in Tom's story. So yeah, enjoy Tom Blomqvist and Lali.
Enjoy. Welcome to the Business of Speed podcast. Tom Blomqvist, how are you?
No, well, thanks for having me on the pod.
So let's set the record straight. How do we pronounce Blomqvist? Tell everyone, please. Let's
You know
start
what?
with that.
That's a great question because honestly, I don't even pronounce it correctly myself. So obviously, that's not a good start. I just say Blomqvist. In Sweden, they're a bit more flair to it. It sounds a bit more like Blomqvist.
Oh,
But
Blom.
yeah, I just go with Blomqvist. So I mean, most people don't even get the spelling right. They obviously put a U behind the Q. So,
So, but I do want to start with Sweden and Your dad, of course, legend of rally racing, Stig Blomqvist. He won the World Rally Championship, 7-time Swedish rally driver. So you were like exposed from birth to this. How was
Yeah.
that? How was life growing up? Because it's different than growing up with a dad in single seater. So it's a different lifestyle. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, from my earliest, memories, I can just remember. Well, what I really remember is him. For example, early childhood memories. He used to be away a lot, obviously. Traveling, racing, playing. But I remember, whenever we would come kind of home. So I grew up in the UK. We used to have a little like bit of land in the countryside and outside Stansted Airport in the UK. So I just remember he used to come home and it'd always be little toy cars or something like that, right? And I think that's all he knew as well. So any little gift he would have for us was only ever related to racing. And then, started with remote control cars. And then before you know it, I think I was 2, 3 years old. I had a quad bike. We had like I said, a bit of land. So I was playing around in the fields. I even remember we had this massive like barn, and for whatever reason, sometimes you'd even have like rally cars there and stuff like that. So I don't remember going to many like events or rallies when I was super young. That was maybe more when I was coming up towards 4, 5, 6 years old. I mean, probably I don't even have memories before that anyway. But so yeah, I always grew up around it. I mean, I remember I used to do the driveway on his lap, drive the car back to the house. Once we get into the driveway, we had a long driveway, and yeah, it was. I guess it was inevitable at some point that I would get into the motorsport, considering that's kind of like my whole child was revolved around that in a way. He had a lot of trophies. I remember that they were like stored in this area of the house that was trophies and then old, memorabilia. And yeah, I guess we were, you know, I've got a younger brother. We were obviously huge fans of him and just of racing. He used to watch the Formula Ones. I remember the tally ticks. Remember that on the TV back in the day?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember he'd always be looking at like results of racing events and stuff like that. We used to watch Formula One together when we were very little, and he had thousands of DVDs of rally crashes and all sorts. Yeah, it was hugely instrumental in my early years.
So I felt that there's two sort of schools with sons of drivers. One is the dad who puts the kid in the cart from an early age, just really focused on their son or daughter becoming a race car driver. And then the other one who's like, kid, you really have to want this. You have to pursue it because it's such a tough path in life. So which one was your dad?
Yeah, good question. My dad was honestly, I guess he put us into that, but into like that was kind of all he knew. So I think that was the only way he kind of knew how to um, almost connect with us was, things he kind of thought were fun. And I mean, don't get me wrong, they're obviously great for us. We had quad bikes and all these fun, cool little toys when we were super young. And I think that developed us. Yeah, I'm speaking obviously, my brother, he went through the same sort of thing early days as well. But he was actually very chill. He wasn't super pushy at all. I mean, there's times now when I look back and maybe I wish he was sometimes a bit more pushy, but I think ultimately he had a huge effect on me because he was so disciplined and very like focused and like almost like OCD. And I think I have a lot of that when it comes to my racing and what I expect of my like equipment or whatever it may be. And that's something he really drove hard on us when we were younger. Yeah, we moved to New Zealand, or obviously you're aware of that as well. I moved to New Zealand when I was young, and kind of grew up there in a way, and did all my go-karting there. And I just remember he used to come up like. So he was living still back in Sweden then, but he would come, a number of times throughout the year and spend a couple of weeks with us. But he wouldn't leave our garage, he'd just be working nonstop on our go-karts. And, I would be excited to come home from school and then go and help him in the garage and work on the go-karts until, dinner time sort of thing. And just his kind of attention to detail and that work ethic and, that I think rubbed off on me massively. And yeah, I'm quite, yeah, I don't know if a perfectionist is the right word, but very, I like things being, as good as they can be or in the best, condition possible. And that's something that definitely has rubbed off from his expectations from, what he expects of other people or just, kind of the work he put in himself as well. So that was, I think that's had a huge effect on who I am as a driver and person maybe in a way.
I'm glad you mentioned New Zealand because recently I've been going on this rant about what is in the water in New Zealand that it produces for such a small country. You guys have just like actively right now, Dixon, McLaughlin, Marcus Armstrong, Shane Van Gisbergen, Liam Lawson, Nick Cassidy, Mitch Evans. How many racetracks are we talking about per capita in New Zealand that you guys are producing this top elite talent year
Yeah, it's
over
not many.
year?
No, it's impressive. I mean, obviously, I moved there when I was 6 years old. Nick and Mitch Evans, they're two of my oldest and closest friends still to this day. I met them when I just got into they were already karting there. I started maybe a year after I'd been in New Zealand, like 7 or 8 years old. And yeah, I've been friends with them basically since 7 years old. And it's pretty incredible to see like just us three who are like best friends ever growing up. Also, come to Europe and have, made careers of what we did growing up and loving in this tiny little country in New Zealand. We might have been racing against like 20 other kids max, right? And three of us have gone on to have decent careers, and then not only that, a couple of guys younger, obviously Marcus, Liam, and then generations older like Shane, Albamba, Brendan Hartley. I mean, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So it's pretty it's pretty incredible, really. Scott, McLaughlin, he moved to Australia, but still, nonetheless, I mean, it's pretty wild when you think about it, I guess. I don't know what it is. I think it's a bit like also the culture of people, personalities, and I think, we're quite, I guess, they're pretty strong, mentally strong, hungry. I think that probably has an effect as well.
I just find it uniquely interesting because it really is. I think per capita, it would be, if we could do the math, it's extraordinary. So I love that.
Yeah.
So you're in New Zealand, you're growing up, you're karting, you decide to go into single seaters. At that point, do you have to go back to Europe to really get into single seaters and start going up the formulas?
Yeah. So I started in New Zealand from the early 2000s through till basically 2008. Yeah, I was pushing my dad. He was back in Europe now. So my mum and dad split up when I was young, hence why we moved to New Zealand and my dad stayed back in Sweden. But I remember, I was always pushing him when I was getting older to like, I want to get into car racing. I want to get into car racing. Obviously, I was unaware of how expensive it was, but nonetheless, that wasn't going to be my problem initially. So I was always, pushing to try and, go race in Europe and blah, blah, blah. But thankfully, or I was fortunate enough that my dad knew a few people early doors, and I was able to go race. So my first year trying out cars was in Sweden, which is a small little championship. Formula Renault Sweden, which was very low key, and not expensive at all. Really kind of family teams and so on. I was 15 years old, so they were a rule in Sweden where you can start. Most countries you can't really start racing cars until 16 unless it's specific categories. Yeah, they had a rule where if, the year you turn 16, you can start racing, and I'm my birthday's in the end of November, so I had basically a whole year of being able to race in Sweden at 15 years old, and my dad knew one of the guys who ran one of the teams, and I went and tested there. I think end of 2008, and yeah, surprisingly not too bad. So my dad was like, oh, okay, like maybe there's some talent there somewhere.
Crap.
And
Now we got to
yeah,
finance this.
yeah, maybe there's some talent there somewhere. And yeah, we managed to figure out a way to go race in the Formula Renault in Sweden in 2009. And yeah, I went pretty okay. I finished third. And then, yeah, that's kind of how it all started. And then I went to the UK, did some testing at the end of the year, and did a couple of races in the Formula Renault UK like winter series, and I won both of the ones I was allowed to do because I had to get dispensation because in England you couldn't drive before you're 16. I think I remember the winter series was just before turning 16, so I got dispensation. And yeah, I won the both two races, and I was like, "Whoa, okay." And I think that was another one like, "Okay, maybe we need to give this a go." Yeah, that's when we realized obviously it was very expensive. thankfully my father had we had a few contacts and here and there, and I was able to get a bit of support from people who had supported him at times. And yeah, we found a little bit of cash to then go race Formula Renault UK the following year, and then yeah, I managed to win that in my first year, and then kind of rest was history in a way. But
Don't you
also
have a
like that's
record,
when
Tom? Don't you have a record of being the
I
youngest
think
who won?
I th- I think so. I think
And
so. Actually,
you know who had the record before you?
yeah, I do remember that because I remember it was a thing at the time. Yes, it was.
Why don't you tell people?
Wow, it was Sir Lewis Hamilton actually.
Sir Lewis
Sir
Hamilton had
Lewis
the
Hamilton.
record. He had
Yeah,
won it when he was 18, and then along came Tom.
yeah. I don't know if I won it before I turned 7 because I can't remember when the last race was, but yeah, I guess I'd just been 16 or just turned 17. So that was really good. And then I thought, Formula One, like obviously I was 16 years old. I was like, oh, this wasn't too difficult. Formula One come at me, so to speak. I mean, that's kind of when the reality of the industry kind of set in, for me, and I didn't realize, obviously, one, I thought my parents were probably wealthier than they were. Two, it was, the sport was just incredibly expensive. I had some people helping me as well at the time. And, that obviously I just kind of thought, yeah, well, I did well, like surely be able to find some money to go racing and just take the next sort of logical step, which would, either be Formula 3, British Formula 3 or European Formula 3 and, go with the best team and, careers obviously got, I've clearly got some talent here to be able to do something with it. And that's kind of where my career kind of took like a bit of I'd say a massive really stall in terms of that, chasing that kind of Formula One dream. Um, I didn't have the budget to go and race, where I wanted to race. We ended up, racing in German Formula 3 with a good team. Don't get me wrong, it was a solid team. Obviously, it's not where I wanted to be in terms of the championship, but yeah, that's kind of where I had to race. And actually had a tough year. Didn't go super well. Well, like I think one race maybe only. But I broke my back that year towards the end of the season, so I didn't even finish the year. So I broke my back. I missed the last couple of races, and then yeah, that kind of like into Euro International, and they offered me to drive for free in German F3, and I won like 6 races with them, and then through that sort of connection, I got Red Bull for 2013, but under the provision that I'm going to race with this team. They wanted to move up to Formula 3, and long story short, that we struggled a lot for performance. That didn't work out at all. We had a pretty, rough year. We were struggling for pace a lot. That's 2013. I was with Red Bull that year. Then similar thing in 2012, actually, just kind of scrapping together to put some budget together. I went with a team that had never done Formula 3 before and Euro Formula 3. Again, we, were super competitive, had some good results here and there, but nothing like that was, going to set the world alight. Yeah, just 2012, 13 was just pretty average years for my career. I didn't really kind of make any sort of progress. Yeah, that was obviously a bit of a wake up call those sort of years after, winning straight away and thinking, this thing's going to be easy, hopefully I'll be able to make Formula One in no time. But yeah, that's just being a kid and being a little bit delusional, right?
Yeah, but also,
Yeah.
Tom, there's something very, first of all, I always like to say this is like one of my signature catchphrases. Racing is a fickle mistress. It is it's so unique in that in most sports, if I'm top in the world at tennis, I'm going to go win tennis tournaments, right? Racing is so unique that there's so many factors that come into it. You need sponsors, you need a great team, you need the car. It's such about timing, about the seat being open when you're free and out of contract. And there's so many variables. We spoke to Connor Daly on the podcast previously,
Yeah.
and he says he remembers exactly GP. Where I'm going to call it F2, but it was GP2 at the time,
Yeah.
where he was on the cusp of could maybe Formula One, maybe not, but he needed to score the points because money, money, money. And he had a crash. Someone crashed into him. I think it wasn't even his fault. And he remembers specifically in the moment, basically as the car is spinning, thinking, that's it. No Formula One for me. It's done.
Yeah.
That's the end of
Yeah.
my dream. He remembers the exact moment.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I think that's what's so difficult in our sport is there's so many, variables that are outside of your control, right? That's why I like actually enjoying, my spare time. I get into like sports where it's literally like just you know, which you can. And so there's that sometimes, yeah, sometimes I wish racing was just me. I wish I could just call up some my guys and be like, guys, we're going to the track today. You know, it's not going to cost any money, but we're going, you know, practicing, and we're going to go and do that. You know, be out there all the time, trying to, you know, get better or improve and you know, improve the team, whatever. But that's just not the reality of our sport. It's also obviously extremely expensive, and for me, what's wild is in today's like world of racing. I mean, it's just not even on in the same ballpark as when I did it. Like when I did it, I felt like there were, yeah, I mean, obviously it's, you know, people are, it's a, I guess a sport of privilege in a way. You know, if you're not connected in the sport, you know, through racing families like myself or others who have, you know, come before or after me, you know, most of it is pretty wealthy, you know, you know, wealthy families or successful, you know, people who are behind these kids. And but back in my day, there was a bit more normality there. Now it feels like it's just taken it to a whole different league. I mean, it's unbelievable what, you know, something that cost 150, $200,000 back in 2010 is now, you know, like a million or even
Exactly.
more.
But we,
And for me,
as
that's just
it's
ridiculous.
ridiculous. When we were at Daytona, and we talked a little bit with Oriol Servia, and he gave a rough number that for a kid to be in competitive karting today, like elite karting, is $300,000 a
Yeah.
year.
It's just,
That's
it's not
mental.
even, yeah.
That's
So, I mean,
mental.
it's just a different level of, you know, who's competing. Like, it's not even, it's just wild now. Wild. Yeah, it's interesting to see, you know, just, I mean, it feels like there's more drivers than ever. You know what I mean?
It's
So
true. So where's
it's,
all this money coming from? Because
yeah,
you
it's,
heard the number thrown out there, what it cost Lando Norris to become world champion, something 30, $40 million. I heard a French interview with Isaac Hadjar, just to get to Formula One cost his family like 6 or 7 million euros. That is not anything that 99% of the population can afford, even if their kid is elite.
no, exactly. And I think the problem now is obviously that stuff you don't even see, you know, most kids now are, you know, they are, you know, bit more privileged maybe, you know, but not obviously through any fault of their own. It's more the fact that I think they don't even get the chance in go-karts unless you're in that position, right? So like the crop of talent is already that that's already where they're at. So it's just that's just how it is, how it's moved on. I think obviously the popularity of the sport, you know, some of the people that potentially have come through successfully before have, you know, potentially set a precedent there, and that's how it's supposed to be done now, apparently. And that's what these teams they can demand that, and that's just the nature of our sport and what it's become. I mean, it's become even where I'm at now, it's had a huge benefit, like the popularity of the sport, Formula One, obviously leading the way there, but that there's been a trickle down effect across the board, and yeah, I think that's great for motorsport.
I
You know,
think that,
no matter what way you look at it, right?
oh, for
It's good for
sure.
everyone
We're seeing a
involved.
resurgence. People are showing
Yeah,
so much interest in IMSA, NASCAR, IndyCar. There is a massive there's a massive surge, and I agree with you. The tide has turned, and people who are interested in one racing are becoming less and less snobby about being open to learning and following other series. And so I'll go back to you for a bit, because you then after this you did DTM for a bit, right? So transitioned into from single seaters. How was that?
yeah.
Huge
So
change,
I feel like I've done every series under the sun except for Formula
literally.
One and NASCAR. Literally, I think they're the only ones I haven't done. Yeah, I've been all over the show. Uh, yeah, so that kind of obviously that whole thing developed from, you know, years earlier. In 2014, I managed to have kind of a pretty surreal experience to get. I mean, this is actually a good story in itself. How I ended up, you know, kind of I guess getting my career on track in a way. I was racing against. I had the support of an Indonesian family, the Galile family, in 2014. So I was fortunate enough to. I was actually 2013. I was racing against Sean, and at the time, his family was also paying for the racing of Antonio Giovinazzi. So I just remember I was friends with the driver coach, and we were at one of the races in 2013, like back end of 2013, maybe August, September, whatever it was. And I was just having lunch with him, and one of Sean or the family sort of helpers. He was kind of doing a lot of the day-to-day, work behind the scenes for the family, and sorting Sean's racing out. Came over to me and was like, "Hey, Tom, like, what's your email address?" Okay, it's all right. Here's my email address, and then the driver coach who I knew was like, "Oh yeah, they want to plan like a surprise birthday party for Sean at the end of the year, and they want to invite as many drivers as possible. The kid doesn't know about it. Dad wants to surprise him, blah blah blah." So okay, that sounds pretty cool. But I hadn't interacted with him or any of them really that season. I was having a bad year with my team, and I didn't obviously I was a relatively shy guy, but like I wasn't friendly with them at all. Anyway, a couple of weeks go by, and I get this email with like an itinerary for this birthday party, and like, wow, that looks pretty cool. Like that looks like an awesome trip. In the meantime, though, I had because I had such a bad year, I wanted to go to do Macau, the big Formula 3 race with a better team, and so I managed to get a seat with Fortec, and but I need to find a little bit of cash for that. So I think my mum chipped in. Good old mum.
Bless her.
I had some small little sponsor, I can't remember what, but anyway, I managed to get the cash to be able to go and do it. But I remember telling them like, "Hey, like I think I'm going to go to this birthday party," which is, the whole plan of the birthday party was to invite a lot of the drivers, go to Indonesia for like the week, 2 weeks before Macau, and then they'd fly everyone to Macau. So, kind of like just on the way. And they were a bit against it. They're like, "Oh no, we think, I don't think it's a good idea. You should, focus on the race and blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, fair enough." But also equally, this like birthday itinerary that came through was like a once in a lifetime experience for me. It sounded pretty insane. So anyway, I was like, you know what? I was kind of umming and ahhing, and I didn't know if I was going to go or not. But eventually, I was like, you know what? Screw it, I'm going to go. So I said, I was late. I was like, "Guys, I'm gonna, yeah. Can I still take you up on that offer?" And I think I flew out there like a day late. Anyway, I went straight to the birthday party, and long story short, this was like an insane trip. I met Siobhan and Antonio kind of properly for the first time, and we started getting on really well. And then I met the father, and the father's basically saying, "Hey, I want to sponsor more drivers next year, and I want to go to this team and blah blah blah." I was like, "Okay, like that sounds pretty crazy, but all right." I just kind of I'd heard this stuff before from people who were helping me, and it's like, yeah, it's we'll pay for you, blah blah blah, and obviously things didn't eventuate. But yeah, I come to the end of the trip basically, and the father's like, "Hey Tom, like we're not messing around here. We're serious. Like, I'll pay for your racing. We want another driver to come together with Sean and Antonio, and we want to go to the best team, and yeah, like I'm serious." And I was like, "Well, okay." Technically I was still with Red Bull, and I hadn't. Yeah, I knew it wasn't going to continue for the year after, but I couldn't really commit there and then. Went to Macau, did Macau. And then obviously after that, I knew, Red Bull, I wasn't going to continue with Red Bull the following year. And I called back the father. I was like, "Hey, look, yeah, I'm good." And he's like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, sounds good." And like a week later, Carlin called me, and they're like, "Hey, can you come and like down and test the new car for next year?" Yeah, I guess this thing is happening. Yeah, then that's basically the rest is history. So that family paid for my whole racing in 2014. I went with Carlin. Had a great year, finished second in the championship. The two guys who, one was ahead of me, one was behind me, those guys are both from Formula One. Esteban Ocon won, and then Max was third, and I was second. So it was a pretty good year, but that's what led then. I had opportunities after that year. BMW basically got in touch and like, "Hey, do you want to come test the DTM car?" So I'd always actually had a relationship with Audi as well a little bit growing up. Also through my dad, and just being in Formula 3 with Volkswagen for many years. And I tested with them a few years earlier, but it was more like a kind of junior sort of thing. And they'd also reached out, but BMW were offering a seat for the following year. So I went and tested with them. Like it was like a 2-day sort of shootout kind of style test, and yeah, I basically did pretty well there in the DTM car, and that's where that's the route I decided to take. I actually had, the family was willing to pay for me again to take the next step up. So I think we're going to do World Series by Renault first. before like F2. But I had opportunities to stay and try and chase that Formula One dream. But I, had something kind of on the table there to turn, become a professional racing driver. And obviously at the time, DTM was a big thing. Had a good career there. And yeah, so I took that opportunity and then haven't really. Well, I did drive a single seater 2 years ago now, but since then I
Yeah.
hadn't really. That was, over 10 years ago now. Where was the last time I was kind of So that was me.
So I think that one of the morals of the story is that FOMO,
That's
you need to lean into the FOMO because you leaned into
You
it.
never know what's going to happen. Like, I mean, without that, who knows what would have happened, right? I mean, chances of me being able to showcase my talent, like a good team and a good, who knows what would have happened. I'm sure. I think, I'm a big believer of, the cream eventually rises to the, top regardless. Like it was just, on what time scale, right? So yeah, but
So
yeah, that,
I will touch on the return to single seaters for a
yeah,
bit because it is part of your story. And
yeah,
for people that don't know, Tom did Formula E. He did IndyCar as well. Maybe not to the success that you would have hoped for or expected.
no,
Obviously,
definitely not.
we've spoken earlier about circumstances, teams, budgets, etc. Right? So maybe I'll just let you speak to both of those single seater experiences, coming back to that. And I'm sure there's even in the bad results, there's always lessons or what that taught you about what you wanted to do with your career. Just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, on the single seater side of things, that first opportunity arose still through my deal with BMW. I was one of the younger guys they had on the books, and with probably some of the most, let's say, most Formula experience. Not going back so many years, so to speak. So they were preparing to go into Formula E. They'd partnered with Andretti for that program, and they were pushing to get me involved in that. So I was like, yeah, hey, let's do it. Uh, so they put me in for a couple of races with Andretti, but it was tough. I mean, that series is extremely challenging, especially getting like thrown in the deep end there. It's quite a unique style of driving, style of racing. And I must admit, the package we had was not good at all. It was it was not a great, quick or a strong car. And my teammate at the time was Antonio Felix Acosta, who had been in the championship since day one. So he had, and I was coming in 4 years later. So he had a ton of experience, knew exactly, how to get the most out of these cars. And I was actually quite quick on a qualifying lap, but I would always be trying a bit too hard and just, making like small mistakes and just couldn't really put it together. And then the race was a different story, that was so difficult. So I really struggled there. Didn't really enjoy it that much because obviously when you're not doing well, it's not never fun. So I didn't even. That only lasted a few races, and then I went back and went back into kind of the work and GT stuff. And then a number of years later, I ended up going back to Formula E, and I went with Neo, the Formula E team Neo, and at the time, they'd been struggling a lot. With their package, and we were really not competitive. Although, I had a couple of good races and good results uh, throughout the year there for what we had. Like it wasn't too bad, and yeah, it was enjoyable to a degree. But I mean, it's not fun when you're kind of like you feel like you do a great job, and you're still like a second off where just the performance isn't there. And at the end of that year, that's when I actually ended up joining Shank Racing. Had I dovetailed my 2021 Formula E experience with the WEC, again with the Galal family. They wanted to go and do some LMP2 racing, so I dovetailed it, and then yeah, I enjoyed that much more. I did really well. Like my performances were really strong, and that kind of got me opportunities. And anyway, ended up going, yeah, down the sports car route, and that led me into my other, my another step back in the single seater world in IndyCar. I always followed IndyCar growing up. Obviously, growing up in New Zealand, Scott Dixon was a big thing when we were little. So like it was always, and it was on TV at like reasonable times in New Zealand because of the time zone. So I always followed it, always watched it, and then obviously being part of My Shank Racing and being closer to, they had a team with it. And I was always keen to give it a go, and yeah, I managed to get that opportunity. They gave me a shot, at a full season in 24, and honestly, this is this was something. I mean, I don't know if I regret. It would have been maybe in hindsight, I would have liked to have seen. At the time, I wasn't, really worried about it, but maybe it would have been nice to see if I would have eventually figured it out. I mean, that's always going to be a what if, right? But I just struggled. Like I felt I just couldn't get my head around, and it's the car, and I couldn't get the car to do what I wanted it to do, and it was this is just in general, like in the street and road course racing. Yeah, I couldn't get it to do what I wanted to do, and it was frustrating. I felt like every time okay, I figured it out, I did something good, but I was still like 3 tenths off, and that championship was so close. Like if you're 1 or 2 tenths off, that's the difference between making into the top 12 and then what I mean. It has a huge effect just being like a
Supremely
tiny
competitive championship,
yeah
supremely.
tiny bit off. And if you're just missing those kind of temps on a regular basis, like it just makes your life very difficult. And so I was struggling. Like it was hard work. And then obviously the Indy thing was just like obviously a bad day. For sure one of my most embarrassing moments in racing.
I'm sorry to
But
hear that.
hey, that's
When you're seeing something like that, Tom,
that's
I'm gonna be
just
honest. No one thinks like
we've
everyone
all done
feels bad.
something
Everyone
stupid like
felt
that.
bad for you. Nobody's like, "Oh, what did he do?" I think that while the driver might feel
Yeah.
embarrassment, the people you're just crushed because we know what it means. So
Yeah, no, of course. Everyone's like, well, you don't even know what to say to you, right? Like I mean, it's not like you did it on purpose.
yeah.
So, yeah, that was, and then after, I mean, I was glad that I wanted it to end. It was just not fun. I was not enjoying it. So, I mean, the thing, if I look back and, if I did that 10 years earlier, I think it would have been a different story. If I came out of Formula 3, gone straight in there, it would have been a natural, progression. I was a lot younger. I had nothing to lose. I already, had been racing professionally for 10 years before I had that opportunity. I had money in the bank, so to speak. I had a career. It wasn't like this is it or it's this or nothing. It was obviously a huge, great opportunity given to me, and I wanted to make the most of it because I felt like I felt that I had the talent growing up to, had all the stars aligned that I could have made it to Formula One. Right, that was my belief. Back when I was young. And so I felt like, I should be able to make the most of it. But I don't know if it was just 10, 15 years or 12 years or 10 years of, I guess, a slightly different, skill set or, driving style that had made me so good in the prototypes. That's something I obviously spent, developed, I guess, naturally, maybe just over years and years of driving such different cars that it was just a bit more difficult to adapt. I was actually always kind of proud, I was proud of myself and that I was growing up at least. I was always pretty good. Like, at least when I was at BMW, I could jump in things and be pretty decent pretty quickly. And so I always thought, I'll figure it out. Like, it's just a matter of time, but it was just taking longer than I anticipated myself. And that was getting frustrating. Yeah, but I'm not mad about it. I mean, it's just maybe there's the slightest what if, but it's
Okay.
not it doesn't change my life. I really enjoyed sports car racing. I'm super comfortable. I feel like I can extract, performance. It's not
So that's why we're gonna move on to
don't lose
happier
any
days.
sleep on
We'll
it. Yeah,
move to
yeah, yeah.
happier days in IMSA where you're absolutely awesome. You won the DPI, which is the precursor to the GTP championship in 2022. You've won the Rolex 24 twice. Are you wearing your Rolex? Do you just walk around like this?
Rolexes, no Rolexes. That's a nice cap though you got behind.
So you really did adapt quite well to these cars. It seems like you formed a really great partnership with Colin Brown. So tell us about that, the partnership, how it is, how much you enjoy this kind of racing.
Yeah, I love it. I got my first taste of it. Obviously, when I was with BMW, I did some endurance racing in the GTE program. I enjoyed it, but I never felt like I never loved GT racing. I never loved, I'd come from obviously a former single-seater background, much faster cars, lighter cars, more nimble cars. You could attack the cars a lot harder. And then when I got back in a LMP2 car, 2021 to do the LMP2, like I was just straight away, oh my God, this is so much nicer. Like I just gelled with it, clipped with it straight away. So, and then when I joined Shank Racing in 22, I just kind of got on with the car and we just had success from the word go. Yeah, I love it. I really enjoy that kind of racing. I enjoy the cars. I enjoy really working with my team, with Mike, with Jim Meyer, with everyone at HRC as well. Like that has been a great time working with them. They're great people, and I really enjoy the way they work and kind of the openness and yeah, no bullshit there, which is fantastic, in our sport. So I think that's enabled me to get the most out of me, personally. And then obviously working with Colin, he started with us in 23. We had a great year in 23, and then the program, didn't happen in 24, and that's kind of, obviously that played a part in me going to IndyCar, but I also, kept my foot in the door and with the program with Action Express. So I've always enjoyed it, and every time I used to come back to that, I remember in 24, I'd come back to the Action. I knew how to drive again. It was kind of refreshing. Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed working with the team. I think, having a team around you that, trusts you and, believe you can do the job, and then equally like vice versa. It has a huge effect on a driver. And I've just really enjoyed the environment, and I've enjoyed racing in IMSA now the last years. Really loved that, style of racing, and yeah, it's just been good fun. And obviously there's been, a bit of success along the way. So that makes it always a little bit more enjoyable.
So you won the Rolex 24, you won Petit Le Mans, but there's one that has eluded you so far, and it's the 12 hours of Sebring. You've qualified well in the front. The race is coming up. Is this sort of your next must-have win?
Of course, I'd love to win it. It's always been a bit of a bogey track for us. Like we've never been quick enough, or we've also had a lot of bad luck there. So I hope this year it just kind of, that would be fantastic. But I think it's always a challenging one. This year as well, I think it's going to be tougher than ever. We got new kind of cars or new tires as well, and it's definitely thrown a little bit of a curveball at everyone to try and understand those. And so yeah, there's a few more unknowns going into the race this year, I think, just to know how we're going to fare. But yeah, obviously it's one that, I'd love to win, but it's always been a bit of a bogey track for us. So I'm hoping we can kind of turn that one around.
Well, maybe this is your year. I'm excited for you.
Maybe.
Hey, what
Fingers
are your
crossed.
thoughts? I wasn't even going to ask you this, but I just thought of it. What are your thoughts on the BOP? And maybe explain to people what that is.
Yeah, so basically what it is, it's called balanced performance. It's a tool that I guess the championship or the rule makers, and even the manufacturers, ultimately, most of them think it's a good idea. Obviously, if you got the best car, you probably don't. But regardless of that, it's a tool just to kind of balance out the field and make sure, no one's, goes away and kind of dominates, which fair enough. I think that ultimately for all the stakeholders, it's probably the right thing to have. Everyone, unless you don't really mess up your car, like everyone should have a fair shot at having a chance to compete for victory from time to time. If not, just, you need to do better and have a better car. It's not ridiculous. It's not like, but it is, I think it's just a function of endurance racing. It's always kind of been there for most of, at least in most categories. I think in the LMP1 days back in the day, it wasn't really there. But then again, they were spending, 5 times what we're able to go racing at the top level today. So it's kind of, it has a, I think at times it can be painful, especially when you feel like, you've got a really good car. But ultimately, that's just the nature of endurance racing, and that's something, we have to deal with. And I think ultimately, I think the pros outweigh the cons in a way, because, I think without it, you'd probably have less manufacturers maybe in the sport. It definitely allows the manufacturers who maybe don't have the same budgets as some of the others to compete at the same level. And I think ultimately that's a benefit. But yeah, it can be obviously very frustrating at times.
It's lovely to see. When we were at the Rolex 24, we interviewed John Doonan live during the race from his bus. It was quite the experience, and he's quite passionate about it also. But you've touched on something. It brings in more manufacturers. It evens out the playing field. So despite some people, because some people are very quite against it, but I just like your take. Your take seems like a very neutral,
Yeah, I
non
mean,
non-Haiti take on it, which is
no, I
good.
mean, I can't because there's like rules in place. Like I can't even speak about it. But
Huh?
so you have to be careful
You're
what
gonna
I.
you could tell me, but you'd have to kill me.
Yeah, exactly. No, no, no. It's I am of the belief that it's I think ultimately it's good for the I'm old enough, wise enough now to know that it's for the big picture and the more manufacturers in the sport's better for me. Uh,
Yeah,
it's better
exactly.
for my career. So ultimately, it's a good thing. And then yeah, but there's times obviously when every driver or every team might be a little bit frustrated. They thought they didn't, get the right end of it, but that's just it comes and goes, and sometimes you're good, sometimes but that's just how it is.
You know
It's
that
been
saying,
in
that's
this
just how the cookie crumbles.
exactly. It's been in the sport for forever. I think IMSA does a fantastic job with that. John and the team have done a fabulous job uh, with the series as of late. Yeah, I think it's yeah,
Oh, it's so
we
lovely.
all
That
have
it's in total growth mode. It's fantastic.
yeah,
At Business Speed, we're big fans of IMSA and sports car
good,
racing, and
good,
it's
good.
so incredible to see you guys getting your day in the spotlight finally. And
Yeah,
these are world-class elite drivers that have grown up racing against names that you're perhaps more familiar with, but that you were all in the same cohorts, and finally you're getting your flowers, and I love that.
no,
Good on.
exactly. No, no, 100%.
I want to talk to you a little bit about what your life looks like when you're done racing. I don't know anything about your interests. I'd like to know, um, are you already like planning? Are you an entrepreneur? Do you do more investing? Like, what does life look like post
Yeah, I'd say
racing?
I'm more on the somewhat passionate about investing and things like that. I do a little bit of that stuff on the side. I try to take care of my capital, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I'm quite passionate about that. I spend a bit of spare time looking through those sorts of things, whether that's public markets or having access to private markets as well and private deals. That's something that I guess I'm fortunate to sometimes get access to, which is always good. So yeah, I do I would say a lot, most of my not most, but I mean it doesn't take up a lot of my time, but I'm passionate about it, so I'm interested about it. I keep I'm quite well read. Let's say I keep up
Oh,
to
that's
date
good.
with a lot of especially latest news, I guess, or especially technology news. Following things there just to see how that can affect my portfolio or whatever it may be. So that's a small passion of mine. Then I've got like I guess business ones. I've picked up golf and I'm like I hate being bad at something. So I'm like fully all over that, trying to get better. But that's frustrating. But
They say it's
yeah,
the
that's
most
good fun.
frustrating of sports and the hardest
I,
to pick up later in life. Like, absolutely a nightmare.
I mean, I broke a rib playing because I like, obviously, how
What?
embarrassing is that? Yeah. Because I went from 0 to 100, obviously, as I kind of, that's just kind of my personality. Like, if I pick something up, I'm going to go all in. But I think my body wasn't used to rotating ever. So yeah, I fractured. I got a stress fracture. I was like, "What's this pain?" I had this pain for months. I couldn't fix. So I finally went and got an MRI, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you got a fractured basically rib or back of the rib." So yeah, that's anyway. Put that aside.
Breaking
But
news
yeah,
on the
yeah,
Business
breaking
Speed
news. Yeah,
podcast.
I managed to break a rib playing golf, so that's pretty embarrassing. But then no, I've got a few friends here. We're working on something at the moment. You know, on a. I mean, I can't really say too much about it, but we're trying to build something actually for in a way for the motorsport world, more for like grassroots racing. Long story short, I mean, it's basically what we're trying to do is build like a more dedicated. I've got a good buddy who's built who's in the biggest tech world, but he's got his own online marketplace for a niche industry, niche sport. He's a huge like racing fan, motorsport fan. Him and his father actually recently just got into the whole track day thing, so they're big on that. But yes, we're putting together something that's can focus on our industry, but more to bring to help or it's more for grassroots kind of racing, or at least to give an avenue for some of the bigger teams to get rid of stuff, sell stuff, offload some of their old equipment, and kind of
Okay.
funnel that down through the lower ranks of our sport. Because being at my level, you don't really see motorsport's actually relatively large. And in America here, there's like I went to a track day with him the other day and couldn't believe how many people were there, just with their like race cars and I mean
Oh,
all
it's
sorts.
huge. It's huge.
So
Do you
it's
show up at a track day and just troll everybody and they don't know who
yeah,
you
one
are and
guy
you're like, hold my
I
beer?
did jump in a car and one guy wanted like it was quite funny actually. One of the like track marshals during the lunch break like had tracked down like our little pit thing that we were using. It's like, who's driving the blue car? And they were like, he's like, man, that guy was unbelievable. Like it was hilarious. And I was like, yeah, they were
There's
like,
this,
they
there's
just
this
started laughing.
Have you seen that viral Ollie Berman video? He shows up
I
at
don't
a
know if I
karting
have,
track with makeup like an old man, but it's like
I haven't even seen that.
perfect. And he's like walking and he does it. He's like a really good actor, actually. He does it so well. And then he jumps into the cart and he just flies. Like and everybody's like, who's
Yeah.
this old geezer? And
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
end, so that's kind of you. It's like the guy in the blue car. Who's that?
exactly. That was me. But yeah, so that's something that we're working on as like at the time being, basically trying to build like a marketplace specifically for motorsport enthusiasts and stuff, whether that's selling memorabilia or I mean parts and used parts from that's kind of like the gist of it.
When can we look out for an announcement on that? Like, how far out are you?
Hopefully in the next like month.
Wow, you're close.
Yeah, it's we're pretty far down the road with it. So hopefully we can get the website live in like a month or so. I mean that's the target. I mean then it's obviously the next thing is going out and getting, obviously we need to build the listings and stuff and getting inventory there on the site. And then yeah, getting people to come use it. So that's something we're working on a little bit now in the background on the side. But yeah, so there's enough there to still have time to enjoy my life. I think I'm very fortunate to do what I do and get enough time to myself as well, which I think yeah, it's very good work-life balance, let's say.
That's good.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, we always ask two last questions, and like I said, my wonderful co-host Vincenzo could not be here, but I'm going to ask his question for him.
All right, no worries.
So you have raced in and everything
Yeah.
basically. So you are familiar with a lot of racetracks. Specifically for racing, which is your favorite track to race at in the whole world?
What racing? So in terms of racing, you mean like
Not
being able
not
to
to go
race?
visit and not to go watch a race, but actually to be on track in any car, like that you love racing. You're like, oh man, this track's amazing.
So I guess there's different like experiences from a pure driving adrenaline pleasure sort of thrill to do a lap. For me, what is the Nürburgring Nordschleife. I mean, it's no doubt about it. That's the most sort of even in a GT car, GT3 car, it's super high speed track, so that it really makes those cars feel pretty cool and like pretty special. That's the most fun or sort of focus, like, and pleasure I've had like driving at a racetrack. Then one that you get quite excited about when you do like a really good lap because you feel like you have to take a lot of like risks in attack was when I used to do Macau. And that whole event was so different and so unique. So that event was epic. So I think for everything, maybe that one's pretty special. And then yeah. And then I enjoyed Le Mans. I like that track as well. So they're probably my top three. I think Nordschleife is the most
The most
fun
most
pleasure I have driving a race car because it's like 8 minutes long.
exact. That's the other thing. It's like
Yeah,
it's not a minute 30 and you're done. You're going 8 minutes,
yeah,
full on
exactly.
concentration through forests.
And then Macau as well because again it's high speed, but it's
Oh,
like big commitment and close to like that one was it also thrilling. And then I just enjoy the flow of Le Mans. Like it's kind of long straights, but into like fast. Like it's just I enjoy the flow of that track. But yeah, definitely Nordschleife number one.
okay. So I need you to put aside hardware championships wins, whether they got a break or not. Maybe they never made it out of F3. Who's the most naturally gifted driver you've ever raced against?
Naturally gifted driver. I mean, honestly, it has to be like the most impressed I've been out of seeing someone is Max because I raced against like I mean it's a boring one because it's everyone's seen that
But no one said him. You're the first person who says Max, so there you go.
Not many people are. He's
Yeah,
not,
against him.
unless you're an F1. Like, not many people have raced against him because he only did 1 year of car racing. But that was the most impressed I've been about. Like, he was super young as well at the time. But it wasn't like I always felt like in quality, like he was young, like he would just kind of try too hard back then. But it was more when it rained, for example, it rained or like tricky situations. We went to, I remember, the street track and it was kind of like the guy was just unreal. I mean, he ended up crashing, but like
Before.
yeah, it was just like, and the amount of FP1 practices where he was fastest was impressive as well. So that was like the most, I mean, that talent's there to be seen, but obviously I've rated myself pretty highly, but that was, seriously impressive. So, I mean, he's yeah.
He's
And then
certainly
I don't
elite.
know. Yeah. I've never raced against him. But, I mean, being a huge fan is, I felt like, Shane Venusbergen, that guy's got so much, like, just a natural talent, car control, feel. I'm a big gut. That was something my father always kind of, instilled in me was, having a lot of feel for the car. But he's got that in abundance. So yeah,
Yeah, it'd be
but I
good to
never
see him
raced
in an
against him.
IndyCar test. It would be nice to see Shane in an
Yeah, it's just
IndyCar
too
test.
big, isn't he? He's just got like that. Just hurt. Like in anything outside of like Formula where you're not hindered by weight. Like in our category, he'd be 4 attempts behind before he leaves the pit lane. So he's got to make up. You know what I mean? Like it's just too big. But yeah, he's got serious bucket loads of natural talent as well.
Lovely. Well, listen, it was a pleasure to talk to you, a pleasure to meet you. We will be rooting for you in Sebring. I really hope you can get your 12-hour win. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you for
Thanks so
joining us.
much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, hopefully down the line we'll do a part 2.
Definitely. All righty.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Ciao,
Cheers,
ciao.
guys.